So this is the iPhone 8, the first of 2 iPhones released in 2017, and due to the second completely redesigning the iPhone line, it was like the iPhone 8 was very much left in the shadows. However, the iPhone 8 is arguably the most mature design of a fantastic period of iPhones. So, should you buy the iPhone 8 in 2020? Let's find out. First off, as usual, we're going to be taking a look at the specs. The iPhone 8 actually got some nice upgrades over the iPhone 7 with the same A11 Bionic processor that was in the iPhone 10, 2GB of RAM, 64 or 256GB of internal storage, so less options, but the increase in base storage amount is a very welcome addition. The iPhone 8 also weighs in at 148 grams, which is pretty standard for most glass and aluminium phones. Finally, there are 3 colors available this time, with of course the usual black and white, along with a brand new color that essentially merged the previous gold and rose gold colorways to make what I honestly think could quite possibly be my favorite colorway ever. As we can see, it's the one I have here, and holy crap does this thing look good in person. Now, there are some more specs that we're going to be going over later on, but that's pretty much the base of things, and while specs are good to know in general, with iOS devices, I've never found specs to be all that meaningful. Pretty much all supported iPhones are well optimized to work with iOS, and so in the performance section later on, we are going to be talking a bit more about how well this optimization works. Moving on, we have build quality, and honestly, it's pretty incredible. As I said before, the iPhone 8 features a glass and aluminium build, weighing in at 148 grams for a really nice premium feel. One of the biggest visual differences between the iPhone 7 and the iPhone 8 was, of course, this glass back. While this did bring along a nice premium feel, as well as wireless charging for the first time ever on the iPhone side of things, it also brought along a massive increase in breakability, at least compared to the previous 2 generations 7000 series aluminium. Now, while Apple did make the claim that this is the most durable glass ever, a Tom's Guide drop test revealed that in real-world usage, if you're prone to dropping your phone like I am, then it probably won't survive. So as always with glass phones, I personally recommend a case. Other than that though, the iPhone 8 is built pretty well. You get that usual premium feel that you get with an iPhone. The camera again is protected by that same sapphire glass, which is huge. Say what you want about the naming, but in my use case, over every iPhone I've used that has this technology, I've never once had a camera lens scratch. Honestly, this is a pretty big deal because the scratch lens can cause a ton of problems, and as somebody who loves to take photos with their phone, as I said, this is a pretty big deal for me. Because of this, I'm pleased to say that in my experience with the iPhone 8, this has worked as well as ever. The iPhone 8 also features that same IP67 technology that we saw in the iPhone 7. This means that it's certified to survive for an hour in up to a meter of water. An IP rating is always something I like to see, and while it's not something to rely on, it is a nice failsafe. Just make sure you don't go scuba diving with this thing. It probably won't survive. Overall, I'm pretty impressed with the build quality on the iPhone 8, and as long as you protect that glass back, it should be absolutely fine. Following this, we have the screen. The iPhone 8 screen has a resolution of 1334 by 750, which, to be honest, isn't all that impressive in 2020. It does, however, have a nice brightness of 625 nits, which I found to be plenty, including in bright daylight. And while I would personally like it to be a little bit brighter like it is on my personal iPhone 10, it's certainly not terrible. The iPhone 8 also brought along one of my favorite features from the iPad, the True Tone display. What this is it essentially adjusts the white balance of your phone screen like cameras do when you set them to auto white balance. So therefore, if you're in an environment with warmer or colder lighting, the whites on your phone will always appear neutral. As someone who does a lot of photo editing on their phone, this is much appreciated, and while it doesn't sound like a lot, once you're used to it, it is very difficult to go back. In terms of build quality, it's survived being used by me without a screen protector, and amazingly, it's not cracked. It has picked up some scratches, none of which are all that deep, but still, I would recommend a screen protector. The iPhone 8 also features the ever useful 3D touch, which I personally love and actually prefer over the haptic touch. If you never used it before, I pretty much guarantee it will change the way you interact with your phone. To activate it, press firmly, you'll feel a click, and voila, you can now open your Instagram camera, share songs faster, and even use the spacebar as a touchpad to correct typing errors. I've said it before, as have some of my friends who have switched over to the Android side of things, this is a fantastic feature on this iPhone. On the iPhone 8, it works as well as ever with nice tactile clicks, and as I said before, it's changed the way that I use my phone. After this, we're going to be talking button placement, which is usually pretty good on iPhones in general, and seeing as this is the most mature version of an iPhone with great button placement, it's only natural that it's going to be pretty great on the iPhone 8. Pretty great on the iPhone 8. That is a fun sentence. As with the 7, gone are the connective volume buttons from the 6 models, with 2 much easier to differentiate buttons for volume up and volume down, and this is fantastic, especially if you're going to be keeping a case on your phone. You get less misclicks, and overall this just leads to a much more premium user experience. Next to the volume up button is a feature I've always praised highly: this mute switch. Whenever you need to, literally at the flick of a switch, you can flip your phone into silent mode, and honestly, I love this feature. Whenever I'm somewhere where I don't want my phone ringing, I can simply flick the switch, and because it's nice and tactile, 99% of the time, I don't have to take my phone out my pocket. I've said it before, I'll say it again in this one, every phone in the world should have this feature. As usual, the lock button is isolated on the right side of the phone, as it should be, so you don't go to lock your phone and then, oh look, I've just turned the volume up. As for the 7, there is no headphone jack. However, that's pretty much the norm at this point. Wireless headphones are so good and so widely available nowadays that it really doesn't matter. And if you do personally prefer wired headphones, then adapters are available from both Apple and Google. Moving on, we have the home button, which again with the iPhone 8 isn't actually a real button. It actually uses a haptic engine similar to the new MacBook trackpads and is flush with the bottom bezel of the iPhone. Because of this, the level of tactility can actually be set by the user. There are 3 options. I personally like the third best because it seems the most tactile, but all this is down to preference, so I would recommend testing each one out and then seeing which one you like best. Another cool thing about the new home button is it actually adds to the build quality of the phone. This is because the new home button is solid state, there are less moving parts, therefore it's much less likely to break. Using the iPhone 8 and its home button just reminded me how nice it is to be able to go home at the touch of a button. And don't get me wrong, while I love my iPhone 10, I love being able to just go and then be back in my home screen. Touch ID also works well, it's as accurate as ever, and I actually think it seems a little bit faster than on the iPhone 7, which is always appreciated. Yeah, all in all, the home button on the iPhone 8 is pretty much perfect. After this, we have the camera, which is, as I said before, a huge factor for me when choosing my phone. And I'm pleased to say that the iPhone 8 actually received some pretty incredible camera upgrades. Initially, it appears that nothing's really changed. I mean, it has the same 12 megapixel wide-angle camera with an aperture of f1.8 and the same 7 megapixel front-facing camera with an aperture of f2.2. However, due to that new A11 Bionic processor that we mentioned earlier, there was a brand new image processor which actually leads to better pixel processing, faster autofocusing in low light, and better noise reduction, leading not only to better photos, but also a significantly improved user experience. Auto HDR does a fantastic job in leveling out the highlights and shadows in a way that looks natural, and overall on the iPhone 8, I am very pleased with dynamic range. Colors also look really good on the iPhone 8 with more, but still natural looking saturation levels, and a good amount of color contrast, leading to rich colors, and of course, pleasing skin tones. One thing that the standard iPhone 8 doesn't have is that telephoto lens, which was actually one of my favorite features of the iPhone 10. Seriously, if you haven't tried it, amazing for street photography. Realistically though, I don't mind that much. I certainly think I still could get along with that single lens perfectly fine, and as it's so good on the iPhone 8, I really can't complain. In terms of the front-facing camera, it's also pretty good. I mean, it's a selfie camera, it takes nice selfies in pretty good quality. There were also some pretty nice upgrades on the video front too. The iPhone 8 shoots in 4K 60 FPS and 1080p slow motion at up to 240 FPS, just like the iPhone 10. And this was definitely a welcome upgrade. It's gone dark outside. I was hoping I'd get a bit more light, but damn. Well, the 4K on this camera definitely won't look as good as the 4K from this camera. I've, on many occasions, used my phone as a B cam, and with a little post-processing, you can get some really stunning looking video. The slow-mo is also pretty good. There is a significant drop in quality and dynamic range, as well as a little bit of a drop in autofocus, but as long as you make good use of the AE lock, you should be able to get some really good looking slow motion with the iPhone 8. Overall, I genuinely believe that while not a lot has immediately changed in terms of specs, there are some pretty huge improvements on the iPhone 8. And despite the standard edition lacking the telephoto lens and therefore portrait mode, this is still a stunning looking smartphone camera in 2020. Following this, we have OS and app performance. My iPhone 8 is currently running iOS 13, and I can honestly say throughout my experience using this phone, the OS and app performance has been flawless. In general, iPhones are pretty good with social media, but when paired with that new camera I was talking about earlier, the iPhone 8 becomes a whole different beast. Despite the 2GB of RAM, I personally haven't had any lagging in games. Now, this may be due to the games I play, mainly being Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. Let me know in the comments, by the way, if you're looking forward to New Horizons. I'm definitely going to be getting that. On social media, as I said, it's pretty much as good as you can get. Everything runs smoothly. As I said, this is somewhat of a theme on the iPhone side of things, and overall, I got no complaints here. Because the iPhone 8 was released with iOS 11, it will almost definitely last a further 3 more versions of iOS, which is pretty amazing. And because of this, the iPhone 8 certainly isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Next, let's talk about the speakers. The iPhone 8 has one down-firing speaker at the bottom of the phone, as well as one technically front-firing ear speaker. Now, this is nothing new. We did see this stereo effect before on the iPhone 7. However, the iPhone 8 was the first iPhone where this effect actually sounded good. The effect is nicely balanced now, compared to the iPhone 7 where one would often sound a little bit louder than the other, not to mention the overall speaker quality increase on the iPhone 8. And while it's not a replacement for real speakers or headphones, I have to say, for some casual listening, this thing is definitely good enough. In terms of battery life, this almost looks like a downgrade from the iPhone 7. I mean, it is a smaller battery at 1,821 mAh versus 1,960 mAh in the iPhone 7. Now, that said, I've had no problems getting through the main portion of my day with this phone. It usually lasts around 5 to 8 hours with just a single charge. Granted, I do often have to plug it in during the evening, but I don't personally mind this, and as long as you're not planning any 12-hour road trips without a charger, then honestly, you probably won't have a problem. Okay, so back in November when I did my review of the iPhone 10, I said that it's one of the best value iPhones that you can buy currently, and I stand by that. However, with the iPhone 8, I'm I'm going to go that extra step further and say that this is the best value iPhone on the market right now. You can either get it new from Apple, or you can choose to get it used or refurbished for considerable savings. Either way, with the iPhone 8, you get a whole lot of performance for a really good price. Alright guys, so that's it for today. I hope you all enjoyed this one. As always, thank you for watching. Remember to like the video if you want to see more content like this, and smash that subscribe button. I'm done for now, and I will see you guys in the next one.